Hello, hello. Hi, everyone. I can see people in the chat reacting and greeting us. Hello, hello.
I'm supposed to say introductory things. Wow, that's going well, but I'm typing, so I can't do two things at once. So apologies.
I think we can give a minute or two for people to join in. How's everyone doing this afternoon? Is it sunny where you are as well? We got a bit of sun here. Very sunny, good.
Is everyone tuning in from the UK, or have we got
Indonesia, amazing. That is very late. I appreciate you being here at 10 p.m.
I could practice my Malay, but it's not going to go very well. I could get as far as Salamat, so I apologize.
Cold in Chile, that's a shame. We're gonna have to change that. Hopefully, it changes. And in Brazil as well. How is it? Oh, it's the other side of the world. It's autumn over there. It's almost winter. Of course.
Fun fact: we realized after the fact at Coven when we called a program the summer program that in half the hemisphere it was not summer. So.
All right, brilliant. Do you want to kick us off, Tara?
Yeah, very excited to do this. Hello, everyone. Welcome. We are here to talk all things pride and supporting LGBTQIA plus people in the games industry with the wonderful Cinzia. So I did have an intro prepared. Really excited to be sitting down with Cinzia Musio, EDI consultant, formerly co-CEO of Coven, advisor at Coven, brilliant person, thought leader, and someone who's been doing the hard work of building real inclusion in the spaces where a lot of people still feel pushed out or not welcome. Welcome to 2025. Since we're here during Pride, it's a good time to talk honestly about where we are, not just the celebration side. So the ongoing fight to make sure that everyone actually belongs and not just gets invited for the show. So today we want to dig into some of those tough conversations, what's changing, what's not, and what it really takes to build spaces that are safe and inclusive for everyone. As part of that, before we start digging into the questions that I'm prepared to talk to Cinzia about, I do welcome everyone to ask questions. Don't be afraid of asking difficult questions. This is a safe space. It's not one of judgment, and it's an opportunity for all of us to learn from one another and continue this conversation. So please feel free to make use of the Q&A. If you do want to use the anonymous tick box, welcome to do so. And we'll jump into those questions in a bit after these ones I've prepared earlier. So before we get started, Cinzia, do you want to maybe just give a brief summary about who you are and your journey to date?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Cinzia, my pronouns are she, they. I've been in the games industry for maybe 8 or 9 years. I should really check. I should remember that. It's been a while since I've been in the games industry. I started on the game making side and very much kind of caught a passion for DEI. And so started doing that at a studio. I started it as kind of like a grassroots thing at that company. And just learned a lot about unconscious bias and all the different ways that marginalized people are impacted in the industry, and decided to I annoyed my way into doing that job for a living a little bit, where I kept saying we should fix these things, and at some point they were like, here, why don't you do it then? And so yeah, I've been doing DEI full time for now 6 or 7 years. So it's been a little while of kind of like doing that work. And yeah, and so I like the way that I focus on DEI, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion, is very much from a place of making sure that it is intersectional, so that it considers all the different people and all the complexities of being marginalized, and the way that society works, because we don't all fit in neat boxes. You can't just say I am marginalized in this specific way and no other way. So it's kind of like focusing on that aspect. and also doing a lot of work in making sure that we remove the shame and the guilt and all these sorts of things that we find around that conversation, that really stops people from having frank and honest conversations about making society a better place.
Thank you. So yeah, as part of that, I think especially when we talk about pride and the visibility of it, because it's like, oh yay, let's shine a spotlight. I'm going to put my lip balm down. Shine a spotlight on pride during this 1 month, and then kind of performatively forget about it for the rest. You know, for some people anyway, the rest of the year. It sometimes feels like companies are just doing the checkbox exercise, the performative. Here's look at these faces of the queer people we have in our community, without truly considering safety, belonging, what that actually means. Where do you see that happening, and what do you think? What would you like to see companies doing instead, or people doing instead?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one, right? Because we're talking about this in 2025, when so many people have completely de-invested in DEI altogether, and it's become such a dirty word now because people are using it as like an acronym instead of talking about the fact that we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, which are very basic root society things that we should be considering throughout everything that we do. So I think this is the first time that I'm saying this in like many, many years, but continuing to do the like visible things is like so important at the moment. I normally am not a fan of pink washing, which is the concept of using marginalized communities to make yourself look better. Um, Thank you, Lois. But yeah, but so it's like I'm normally not a fan of that, but I think this year, like seeing companies that have continued kind of like supporting Pride and saying that they're promoting Pride and doing stuff for Pride at their companies, it is feeling a lot more important because we have been shown that it is still optional and that people can kind of like opt out of it. So I think continuing, especially in an environment where it is more difficult than before to be loud and proud about who you are, and as a company to show that you care about your marginalized, but particularly queer and trans employees. Continuing to kind of like showcase that you are there, that you want to support your employees. And I think in general, like during Pride, kind of like taking that moment to say that you support trans people because of everything happening, not just in the UK, but coming from the UK, from the perspective of the UK, where we've recently had the Supreme Court deciding that like we define women by their biological traits, which doesn't make any sense. Biology is not that simple. It's something that we've taken a ton of steps back, and we're no longer respecting the law, the global law in terms of human rights by doing this in the UK. So it is a really great time for companies and for individuals to say that you continue supporting trans people, that you believe that trans women are women and that trans men are men. And I think particularly in spaces like these spaces, which are gender-based spaces, just saying that when you say women, you also mean trans women as part of that. Is something that is really, really key at the moment. And it's part of kind of like celebrating Pride, is saying that you are celebrating Pride no matter how easy or difficult it is. Because it's very easy to celebrate events like Pride when everything's going well and you're just going to the parade and putting glitter on your face. But that's all nice and well. But I think like what we need is for people to show up when things are more difficult, is for people to show up when it is awkward to be showing up, and particularly in the games industry, is being there for people even when it comes to franchises that you really have like an affiliation with as a kid, like kind of like being like, all right, this affiliation that I have, this nostalgia, it still hurts like queer and trans individuals, so I should be putting my heart and soul behind supporting people. Just continuing to kind of like being there, being present, and also investing in making sure that the company that you work for is inclusive, is allowing people to feel free to be themselves, because we have almost 30% of the games industry that's LGBTQIA plus. That's according to the UK games industry census. So there's a ton of people that are LGBTQI plus in the games industry. But when it comes to studios, those people might not be out to their companies. And creating spaces where people can be themselves unashamedly, and without worrying about the consequences of being themselves. That takes work. That takes like creating an environment that is that it's a meaningful environment. It's an environment that continues to be there for people, and that's something that you have to do actively. You have to do every day. You have to continue showing during Pride or for the rest of the year that it continues happening. So there's through like having policies that kind of like supports LGBTQIA plus people. Um, it's stuff like if you have a policy for people to go on bereavement, make sure that it also includes chosen family, because LGBTQIA plus people might not have contacts with their parents anymore because of coming out to them. Like it's the reality of it. But they have a chosen family, and if they lose a member of their chosen family, it will have as big an impact as it would have like a parent or a direct person, like a direct contact. So making sure that you think about it further than just what we kind of like expect a traditional nuclear family to look like, and
Mm.
just go a little bit further outside of that in all your policies as well.
I think, I mean, this touches on so many things that, we've covered in our journey with Code Coven, obviously. But for example, like when we first launched the summer program at the start of the pandemic, it was really out of a need of so many of our communities didn't want to have their internships cancelled and have to go to back home to a place that was not necessarily safe. And here we are dealing in 2025 with a world that has become even more vocal about its toxicity, whereas perhaps, or maybe this is the cynicism in me, was a little hidden, hidden behind closed doors, this kind of toxicity, in the past kind of years. If we were to talk about sort of the more tangible, perhaps, and this is kind of like a riff on something that you've talked about, is you've got from the studio side, what can studios do? What are you said the bereavement policies, chosen family, to indicate that they are a safe space and they're to build a space where people actually belong. But also on the flip side, there's lots of people who are looking for work right now or to change jobs. What should they be looking for maybe in these studios? What's a good way of seeing like, oh, this is a green flag?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think right now, like seeing studios that are continuing to celebrate Pride is going to be a really great sign, because there's not that many, unfortunately. I might try, like, as we get to the Q&A, to find a post from Leon, a dear friend and another DEI person in the games industry, that has collated all the posts of all the companies that are saying something about Pride at the moment, just to give you kind of like that highlight of which companies are actually continuing to put that statement, because it last year it was kind of like expected, and this year it's not so much the case anymore, which is very unfortunate to say it in very light terms. But yeah, so kind of like looking at that, looking at which. Thank you, Adele. Yeah, that's Leon's post. Continuing to kind of like look at companies that are supporting LGBTQIA plus people. I think there's an insight that if there is effort in supporting LGBTQIA plus people, there is support in supporting marginalized people in general. Looking at the job posting, you can put the job posting through Gender Decoder. If you Google like Gender Decoder, there will be like a website that comes up. Looking at what terms they're using, whether they're gendered or not. I think that's really interesting, because it kind of like gives you an idea of whether there is work that's being done behind the scenes to address unconscious bias. And then looking at how the company is presenting themselves, like is the what is the website like? Do they have diversity in their representation? Is it all focused on alcohol when it comes to kind of like the benefits and talking about the social events? Are they thinking about you having a life outside of work? They're talking about benefits that imply that it is acceptable for you to have a life outside of work. Thank you, Tara, for the gender decoder. Um, it's things like that, like it's even looking at like, are they talking about crunch in their benefits? Are they talking about parental leave at all? Because like a company that doesn't think that you could go on the parental leave is a company that is not going to be looking at hiring people that are like that want to get pregnant, because they don't want you to go away for that longer period of time. And it all kind of like combines into this thing of what is the company doing? Like, how is the company thinking about you? Are they thinking about you as a person sitting behind a desk doing work for them, and with that kind of like impression that they, because they hired you, they own you, or are they looking at you as an individual that they want to, like, they want you to thrive, etc. Like, the way that they talk about benefits and all of that, and the way that they talk about like growth and learning opportunities and all these sorts of things, really gives you an idea. I think that there's stuff like, if you see like something like a pizza party, or like work hard, play hard, or looking for ninjas, I think is like a big one. There's a lot of words like this where you can tell that they are kind of expecting you to be like fully doing work and nothing else. A question that I love asking when I'm in interviews is about crunch. Is asking people like, how do you prevent crunch from happening? And I've found that it is, yeah, family is a big one. Like when you get an answer, like an answer about crunch is an answer where they're talking about, like there is overtime, like we not shying away from talking about the fact that they have overtime sometimes, but then talking about what they're doing to prevent it. I've been in interviews where I asked about crunch, and they talked to me about how everyone at their company is very passionate. They all want to see the best product come together. And to me, that was an extreme, like, massive red flag, because it means that they are relying on you being passionate in order to take advantage of you. And they want to kind of like work you to the bone, because if you're not working late, then you're not passionate. You don't want to see the product succeed. And that's just a very toxic way of kind of seeing that approach. So yeah.
No, that's brilliant. And oh gosh, see, this is the thing, right? Like you've given us an answer. I have a set number of questions that I've got to ask you, but you said something, and now I want to be able to riff off of that. So I'm going to watch out now. um, I think it's really interesting because it's kind of, we're in this, in almost like a toxic game loop or a toxic game circle. Anyway, from like, don't tell anyone, okay, everybody who's in this chat, but I rely personally on Cinzia for a lot of things to go, is this the right boundary? Is this that, can you give me a FAFO consult on this? Because I think systemically, the way, sort of, in a way, a lot of us have been brought up, especially as people of marginalized genders, is they're so used to the microaggressions and so used to the, oh, well, we have to people please and we have to fit inside this box, that we won't to even bring up these challenges or where our boundaries are for what I think many of us would say to somebody else. What are you doing? You've got to put this boundary in place. You've got to respect this. But when it comes to ourselves, we have trouble articulating that or pushing that forward. And especially maybe in a corporate culture or a studio structure where there are power dynamics at play. How would you, like, do you, you've walked me through it so many times, to be honest. How do you address that? How do you come, like, help somebody to articulate what that problem is, take it to a leadership person, and find the advocacy that they need?
It's difficult. Like, to be completely honest, in the past, it took me being told by my manager, who was the head of HR, that I was being bullied, for me to believe that I was bullied. Because up until that point, I was like, this is how this person acts. They're just an ass to everyone. Like, they're not targeting me. And then it took me, someone being in a position where their job is understanding what bullying and harassment looks like, for me to be like, oh, okay, now I see it. Now I understand this is what was happening to me. It's very easy when you're used to those microaggressions, when you're used to kind of like talking to people and trying to speak up, and people being like, oh, that person didn't mean it that way, and just kind of like dismissing you consistently, for you to put yourself into that mindset as well. So finding a safe space, people that you can talk to. I think this is why, places like the Limit Break mentorship, or finding a mentor outside of that, is really valuable, because it is someone external, someone that doesn't have the kind of like the day-to-day insight that you're getting. Like, they haven't drank the Kool-Aid from your company, basically. Like, they're not in it, so they can see it from a distance, and they can much more easily tell you when things are not right, and kind of like going to them and saying like, this person has said this to me, or like, I'm being treated in this way, is this fair, is this right? And having someone external like that can tell you, actually, this isn't right, is a, like, it, to me, is a great start. If you can find that, I think I would really encourage doing that, because sometimes it just takes an external person that's not living your day to day, for you to realize and for you to be able to kind of like process the emotions and the gaslighting you're experiencing and the gaslighting you're doing to yourself realistically, because we're teaching ourselves to gaslight ourselves as a result of society gaslighting us. And so yeah, just having someone that you can talk to like as much as possible externally. And then when it comes to speaking up, when it comes to advocating for yourself, like always having allies is really, really great. Like if you can be an ally to other people so you can help them speak up when they're not in a position to do so. But otherwise, like as much as possible, and this kind of like might feel a little bit backwards going, but I try when it comes to like speaking up and advocating to be as factual as possible, to try and go to the very logical things. And also if you're going to like someone senior to advocate for yourself, it's talking about it from a place of how this impacts you and in return impacts the business. So it's like by not being able to do this at my work as a result of the way that I'm being treated or the way that I'm being pushed back, it is impacting the project in X and Y ways, and kind of like trying to go into those very impact led things, but aren't something that someone can dismiss as just you being emotional or overreacting. And yeah, and then like and it's the other part of being an ally is also being there to speak up for people when they're not able to, when they're not in a position to safely speak up for themselves. Because if you're very junior, it can be difficult, especially in an industry that feels so shifting and like ground moving constantly. Like it feels like the ground is going to break from underneath you at the moment at any time.
Mm.
So having like being an ally is being there to when you're in a position of influence to speak up for someone that is not in that position.
I mean, it's funny because it's like in order to create the environment for a studio, particularly for studio or team directors and things like that, where everybody's truly feeling included, you need the outsider to, like you said, not drinking the Kool-Aid, right? To
Yeah.
be able to kind of, and this is particularly like the nuance of the work that you do and why you're a specialist and what you do is because you can hold space for the person for those power dynamics and say, okay, let me hear what you're experiencing. Let me take that and process that. And let me take it to whatever the leadership or that structure is in a way that holds space for both things to be true, right? Like, yes, you are running a business, but these are the people who are making your business viable, right? Like you have to care for your employees.
It's I cannot say it enough. We are in a creative industry, and the only way for people to be creative is to feel safe. You cannot be creative, you cannot innovate in ideas and in making something fun if you are fearing for your life. Like
Mhm.
whether it is because of society or whether it is because of the way that you're being treated, like you're fearing for your stability. You feel like if you say anything, it will just all go away. Like this is not an environment where you get to be creative. It's an environment where you might like stumble into creativity with a little bit of luck, but the
Mhm.
more the more you kind of like the more company invests in that psychological safety, the more you're able to have people thriving, and the more we're going to be having those really cool games that we all want to be making.
It's true. I'm going to jump for a second to the audience QA before returning to our questions. I did want. I'm going to start from the first question that came in from Jade. Are you going to be covering disability and neurodiversity pride as well as LGBTQIA plus? Um, Jade,
So that would be, I think, a question for Mary Jane.
brilliant.
I can talk about it. I am disabled. Oh, okay, perfect, cool, thank you. It
Oh
was
yeah.
meant to be for Mary Jane. Yeah, I think that I am disabled, so I can talk a little bit about that. But the way that I like to talk about all this subject, anyways, is from again like that intersectional perspective, because when you're supporting one marginalized individual, you're supporting everyone. So I kind of like see it as that perspective. I think it's really important to kind of like look at um, the accessibility side of things and how you can make spaces more accessible. And I would really encourage, because next month is Disability Pride Month in July. So I think having someone that does accessibility, kind of like specifically speaking about that, would be extremely valuable. And Mary Jane, I have people to recommend if you want to talk to some people about that.
Just to grow off of that point though as well, because I think we were very aware of, and this is riffing off of something completely random again. When it comes to intersectionality of marginalized people, or people who are, I mean, there's so many different pockets of people who are being affected by things. I think there was a kind of a message of being aware of like not trying to pit them against each other.
Yeah.
Why that's so important, and like I'm not being very eloquent about this point, but you know where I'm getting at, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's very easy when we're in a society where people that are kind of like trying to create culture wars are trying to pit different marginalized people against each other constantly. Like that's a big thing from people that want to see us not advocate for themselves, and for people that want to see the status quo keep staying the same as it is, where marginalized people are kept behind. It's very easy for them to try and like talk about identity politics and all these sorts of things. But realistically, we um like we all experience the way that society treats people, like from being marginalized, from like the way that like people are being kept behind, etc., to even the way that men are being, like, cis able-bodied white men are being kind of like expected with to act in a specific way, and kind of like creating that toxic masculinity. And the best way that we go through all of that and improve society for everyone is through intersectionality, through thinking about where it is that you have privilege, how do you use that privilege to help people around you? Where is it that you're being oppressed, and how do you fight back about that, around that oppression? And how do you use again your privilege to fight back about around, like, to fight back the oppression that you're experiencing? And so I like to talk about marginalized people in kind of like that very broad term, that it includes everyone that is oppressed by society, everyone that is marginalized by society, because there is different complexities within different marginalized groups. But with that being said, I, as a white person, am not going to be experiencing life in the same ways that a person of color is going to be experiencing it. I have my own privileges, and I get to live through life experiencing those, and I get to speak up and say the things that I'm saying as a white person, and people don't assume that I'm angry when I'm saying these things, because I'm white, and so I can be passionate without it being mistaken for anger. And so I'm allowed to be a lot more loud about a lot of things that someone that's not in, like, that doesn't look like me, is going to be able to say. And so this is why it's so important to be looking at that from all the different perspectives, and to be kind of like thinking about how we support all individuals. And obviously, like, this is pride, and it's about like queerness, and like the importance of, and I use the word queerness on purpose. Like, to me, it is something that's very important, because it is about like including all the LGBTQIA plus community. It is like being LGBTQIA plus in a way where you are proud, you are like kind of like taking that as your identity, and using it to make the world a better place effectively. And so yeah, like we're obviously talking about that, and the way that society is currently like fighting back against all the rights that were hard fought for by Black trans women. um, but like it like freedom and liberation is only there if everyone is free. And it's something that, like, you cannot leave one group behind. You cannot be fighting and say, like, like kind of like fight about who is more oppressed or anything like that. Like, it all needs to be valid in order for all of us to be able to move forward.
What a time. Thank you, Chins. Um, as an extension to that, I mean, gosh, It's like, which way do you turn? Which fire? I mean, yes, it's almost dismissive to say which fire are we fighting, but which challenge is around. And I think the other thing that also had come up recently, to speak about the Supreme Court ruling, and particularly here in the UK, is the exclusion of, how am I going to put this, of trans people, certain people from spaces, from certain corporate spaces, from, that the ruling. I'm sorry, I'm not eloquent about how to say it, but if marginalized people don't show up in these spaces, and then those spaces end up being shaped entirely by the people who want to exclude them. So how do you think about that balance, and how we're going to be able to stay present in those spaces, take our space, and go, sorry everybody, I kind of swear a lot, so like a giant F you to the people making those rules, because they're the diplomatic way, I suppose, is how do we push for change from
Yeah.
within?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is where there's two different approaches that I think are really valuable and really important. Um, yeah, it's important for people to be there. It's important. I think when you're marginalized and you're seeing spaces that are actively trying to push you away, that are actively trying to stop you from attending. And so, in the UK specifically, because of the ruling that we've had with the Supreme Court that is being pushed back, the Equality and Human Rights like committee in the UK that kind of like rules on the law and everything has put a temporary guidance that isn't in any way it's not enforceable, but has put that guidance saying that trans people should go to the bathroom of their assigned sex at birth, instead of going to the bathroom of their gender. And even then, and said in some cases, and by in some cases they mean if you're passing, that you should then no longer be allowed to go in the bathroom that is from your assigned sex at birth. And so effectively kind of like relegating trans people to have to use the disabled bathroom, which then makes that space less accessible for disabled people. So it has kind of like all these ramifications behind it. And with the idea that if you're doing that, then trans people are not going to be there. They're not going to be present. They're just going to kind of like remove themselves from these spaces, because they don't know how to go. They don't know how to exist in society anymore. And so they're just going to disappear. And that's kind of like the intent behind creating regulations like that. And so we've seen in the UK quite a few large companies and large like event spaces, etc. There was a festival as well that did that, where they said that they were going to follow that guidance, even though they don't legally have to currently. And we have like great people like the Good Law Project that are pushing back to try and stop that from happening, as the law. Um, and so it's yeah, with a space like that, I think that as a marginalized person, it is important for you to figure out like how safe you want to be feeling, like kind of like think about your own personal safety, but then also don't go away without a fight. Like, do not consent in advance. You don't have to. You don't have to just make yourself disappear because they will you to. And I think continuing to show up, continuing to be there, and showing to people that you will be there, even though you're not wanted. Like, you will be an inconvenience because you've decided to take up space that is yours to take, is really valuable, and it's really important for us to continue doing that. And it is protest, it is fighting back, and it is all of that. And I think there's that side, and then as an ally, it's also about like figuring out how you can then push back. So I think, like boycotting is something that's super valuable when you're seeing these things happen, kind of like saying, I refuse to give you my support. But it is very valuable when you're an ally. And I think that to me, when you are a marginalized individual that is being actively asked to be removed from those spaces, then being like, I'm going to let those people push back by boycotting you, but I will push back by being there and showing you that I am not scared, that I will continue to exist, and that there is nothing you can do to make me disappear.
That's the one I need on a tote. Okay, that's the T-shirt I need. All right. It's so hard, isn't it? Because to be so tired and face these challenges and then have to continue to fight. But it's exhausting, right? But equally, when you do find those allies to collectively stand behind them and kind of also push them up to be able to continue, for them to be able to keep those doors open, it's prick, man, that's just what it means to care about people.
Yeah,
Take
and
care of each other.
it is exhausting, and like it is absolutely okay for you to take a beat and be like, I need to take care of myself and my own well-being. And right now, I know that if I continue fighting, because this is something that my therapist has told me so many times, but like, the advice of like, you have to put on your mask. You have to put your mask on before being able to help others. Like the thing that they say in the plane, like you
Mm.
have to put your own oxygen mask on. Like you can only help people around you if you're still able to stay above water, if you're still able to breathe and continue like supporting yourself. Like if you're burnt out, you're not gonna be good for anyone. So like it's very important through all of that, especially when times are so tough, to like practice that self-care, to keep looking after yourself and to keep making sure that you find joy, because joy is defiant. We live in a society that doesn't want us to experience joy, because if we're tired and miserable, then it's a lot more difficult to fight back. Are you writing "Joy is Defiant," Tara? I love that.
No choice to.
But it is like it's very difficult to fight back with, like, when your rights are being stripped away, if you're tired and if you're miserable and if you're just like too exhausted to do anything. But if you continue, like if you're like, things are shit, but I will continue to find ways to experience joy and to find ways to keep myself healthy, then you have that energy to be fighting back in, like whatever way works for you to be fighting back. Yeah, it is a hard learned lesson. I had to learn that one through burnout therapy. So it is a hard learned lesson for myself as well.
I'm still emotional at Joy is Defiant. Like the tears are. Um, well, yeah, gosh, this is brilliant because like I didn't need to prepare so many questions. Y'all have them, and I'm going to dip back um, uh, into the Q&A section. Have you encountered any hurdles or problems being a minority, like specifically because of it, from Diana?
Um, yes. I think like there's there's different things. Like before I came out as non-binary, I was always like a bisexual person, so it was always difficult for me to like find space in the like being in the LGBTQIA plus community. It took me a very long time not to feel that like imposter syndrome. So I found like it took me a long time to kind of like feel included in that community. But this is why the like the word queerness and being queer is so important to me. But like as as like a like femme presenting person, I think that I've experienced like the misogyny that everyone experiences. I'm an immigrant in the UK, but I was an immigrant in my country of birth as well. So as like growing up, I've definitely experienced that. People that were kind of like, especially with a name like mine that is extremely Italian, even though I don't speak Italian, but my name is very much Italian. Um, I love that, Camille. It's yeah, I grew up and like I've been told so many times like to go back to my own country and all these sorts of things. Like I've grown up with that, and that's all. I think that's part of why I don't want to accept it anymore for other people. And obviously, like I'm talking about kind of like experiencing the xenophobia, but it is like, I've had it easy, and I'm very well aware of how easy it's been for me, even though I've experienced some of these things. But yeah, I think that like it took me a long time like being in professional spaces to be taken seriously, and I now get told a lot that I come across as assertive and very sure of myself and like all of these things, but I've been told more than once by people in games that assertiveness and that like confidence that I put across is scary. Like that's something that I have been called so many times. I'm very scary because I think like helping, like getting people to get their shit together apparently is scary to some people. So I think it's something that I fought against a lot. Like even the softest language that I could be using, and the kind of like the yeah I know the like I can put all the sugar on top of everything and just be like the sweetest possible. Like as soon as I talk about like supporting people and having people advocate for themselves and everything, it does come with that pushback. And like there's that, and obviously I think that like Clara and I had what was it, 20-25 minutes expose done on us on YouTube a while ago of someone like going through our LinkedIn's and like trying to see like how terrible of human beings we are for trying to make the games industry accessible and inclusive. Just the worst, honestly. So I think like through that, like to the harassment and everything else. When you're speaking up and when you're kind of like talking about this subject, you're kind of unfortunately signing up for that in the games industry. You're signing up for being harassed, and you know that like one day your tweet is going to be like tweet your posts are going to be seen by people, and they're going to be misconstrued in all the possible ways. And like I think like the weirdest thing that's happened is when people started like noticing Coven and noticing my work in DEI as well, like which happened when a company that I worked for in the past announced redundancy. That people were very quick to blame me, even though I hadn't worked there for like 2 years. They were very quick to blame the fact that I'd done DEI for them as a reason for the redundancies happening 2 years later. Um, and like all that I was thinking was like, well, at least it's not Elon Musk that's noticing me. So I think like we all experience these things, and the louder you are, the more likely you are to experience it. But again, like I'm not going like it's fine. I'll be okay. Like it's just people complaining about me on the internet. I can turn it off very easily. I've made sure to do all the things to keep myself safe online. Like I can't. It would be very difficult to dox me, because I've done that work behind the scenes to keep myself safe. But it is the reality of kind of like living in these kind of spaces. And it is a reality that we shouldn't accept and that we should be pushing back against, and we should have like companies that have communities of games of people that play their games, um that what that to have when you have that like that community, to have people in positions of power within games that have large communities to hold people accountable and to not allow the games community to be as toxic as it is. That's something that we're so scared of losing money, that we're not thinking about all the ways that we are losing money by making those communities uninclusive, and by pushing the wider group of people from going into it, because we are trying to kind of keep the very loud minority of people that like the capital G gamers, as I like to call them, that will kind of like push back against any form of diversity and inclusion. If we continue letting them exist in our communities, then we're not going to be able to tap into the much wider and bigger market of marginalized individuals, which are the majority of the world.
Mm-hmm.
As much as they are being pushed back, like the global south is the majority in the UK. 52% of the UK are women. Like it is a like it's a market that we could be tapping into by making the spaces more inclusive.
Mm-hmm. Well, on that, like, I just wanted to touch on something that you said about like you having it easy. I also want to say that, well, it's relative, and your experiences should not be diminished of the challenges that you have that
Yeah, no,
are
absolutely. I also want to acknowledge that while I experienced some things that were terrible, I'm fine. Like I'm not gonna get like arrested
yeah.
just because I'm walking wrong, right? Like it's yeah. I have experienced terrible things, but also I can use that to fuel me to help other people.
Um, thank you. On that note of, like with when that video came out, I did say I kind of made a joke of it of like, well, I really respect that they did their research and their video editing was, pretty good. And I'm glad that they have the time to do that. Um, but with the serious part of it, like, what would you say to people who want to do the right thing? But I mean, I think about that one video and it scared me,
Mhm.
absolutely freaking terrified me. But there are people out there who are getting done more than I've ever experienced. So hats off to them because I think they're far braver. It's certainly your experience more than I have. Not that it's competition, but yeah. What do you say to people who want to do the right thing but are scared of that kind of
Yeah, I mean,
action?
I think that the likelihood of you getting targeted for speaking up is so low, that it is worth trying anyways, because the alternative is much worse. Like, the alternative of no one speaking up is a world that continues getting worse. So I think it is worth speaking up. You don't have to speak up on social media. Like, we don't have to be on social media. You can show up to your friends. You can show up to your community in ways that isn't being online. Like, you do. I'm barely active on any social media nowadays, because it's a place where it's all about the algorithm to keep you on the platform for as long as possible, and the best way to keep you on the platform for as long as possible is by prying on your negative emotions. So it's you don't have to do it online. Like, you can be there, you can be present, you can speak up in your own communities. And one of the scariest things about speaking up and about kind of like, being there and being present and being an ally is making mistakes. um, you are a human being, and making mistakes is part of the human experience. You cannot go through life not making any mistakes. It doesn't, you can't, it doesn't happen, it doesn't exist. We all make mistakes, it will happen. It's very scary and it's very difficult to make mistakes when there's human beings on the other side. And you you the only ways that you're making mistakes is when you're speaking up, is when you're talking about it. Because if you don't say anything, then there's nothing for you to make a mistake on. But again, like, making the subject taboo and like making it disappear, it's very difficult. Like, it's very easy to make things go taboo, and it's very difficult to like fight back against that. So the more you speak, the more you talk, the easier it is, for things to continue like improving for everyone. But yeah, so like, you're going to be making mistakes. Like, the way that, this is one that Leon came up with and I will use forever. The way that I like to talk about it when it comes to like what you can do when it comes to making a mistake is called, like, Leon calls it a triple A, because we're in games, and it's acknowledge, apologize, and action. So acknowledge that you've made a mistake, apologize about it, but apologize in a genuine way. I don't say sorry, you're offended. That's not an apology. And then take action. And so, whether it is like in front of the person, or like you say, like, I'm going to do X and Y in order to stop making that mistake. Um, but then, like, go away and kind of like learn about what it is, like how you can how you can learn, how you can stop making that mistake again, etc. So that's kind of like, that's a great way to kind of like react to making mistakes. But then, yeah, if you end up speaking up like on social media or anything, or if you're speaking up and you're finding yourself being targeted, um, just like put yourself on private, like go private where you can. Keep an eye on your social media. There's a really great tool on Google where you can set up alerts, to like send you an email when, like, something comes up with your name or something like that. And so, like, I have it for Coven, I have it for myself. So if people like, if we you were to start like, if people were to start like speaking about us on Reddit or 4chan or something like that, then those alerts would come up, and then I can like figure out like how to make myself private. Like, I'd disable the contact form on my website while people were like going through and kind of like looking at what I was doing and everything else. Um, I don't remember the name of the tool, Adele. It's it's in your settings on Google, so you would have to like I think you have to have a Gmail account to have it. But I can look it up.
Is it just the Google Alerts one?
Yeah, it's Google Alerts, I think. Yeah.
I think hopefully this works.
Yeah, no worries. I think that's one of the most valuable things because you can like you can see like when things are starting. Like someone was making a thread about me on Twitter, and I wouldn't have known because I don't check Twitter anymore because
Mm.
why would I? And it's because it came up as an alert on Google that I knew that it was happening. It was someone that I had blocked as well, and obviously because they've changed the way that blocking works on Twitter now, they were still able to like look at my profile and everything else. So I was able to stop stop things or like being aware of it when it was happening as well, so I could keep myself safe.
Mm. Um, Chins, just I realised. See, you could put us on a talk together, and 5 hours later we'd still be chatting. I realised that we've only got about 15 minutes left, I think, and I want to make sure we get through
Yeah.
questions. So I'm just going to jump to the anonymous question, and then Jade, I'm going to bundle your questions together. But due to the prejudices not only of LGBTQ plus people, but for women in general that are present in the gaming industry, especially in such a male-dominated field, is it better to not inform the company of your gender in the application portion of applying for a job? Do you think that this matters?
So in the application portion, if they're asking you this question, it's not a question that is going to be going to the interviewer or the decision maker. It is there for them to know who is applying. And when a company does that, it's actually great. Like it's a really, really good thing for them to do. So I would encourage you to put that up. The thing that I would say is really depending on your level of how comfortable you are and also how you're reading the companies about like letting them know of your disability. That's something that I would kind of like be a bit more cautious about. But if like it really depends on the context that the company is asking for, because like you're seeing a lot of companies saying like we are a disability confident employer, and so we want to give more chances to disabled individuals applying for you to get through like to get through the interview process, and so you can opt into that, but then it also informs them that you are disabled. So like if it's done in a way that is positive action, then definitely. If it's like them asking you for your pronouns at application, etc., like you know that they're doing it in a way to kind of like make sure that the place is being inclusive. But that being said, I think like what Lapis is saying is that you you're not going to be able to hide who you are realistically, and it like and with being LGBTQIA plus, if you do hide who you are, like it could come at a great like a great impact to your well-being. To kind of like have to force closet yourself. So if you're in a position where you can do that, I would say that you might as well let them know. And if they're going to not want you to work for them as a result of like you saying who you are, then it was always going to come up in one way or another. So I like let them show their whole faces to you earlier rather than later, so that you don't have to be invested in the company and already like be working there, etc. before it comes up, and then you're feeling a lot more stuck basically.
It's kind of a good green flag, red flag test in itself,
Yeah.
isn't it? Yeah. Um, Emily's question: would you have any advice for those who would want to who want to continue to work in games or enter the games field, or start their own organizations in a landscape that seems to be making it more difficult for those from less privileged backgrounds to access funding and other resources to succeed?
Um, I mean, so if you want to get to start your own studio, please look at Coven, what we're doing, because we're working on Aurora at the moment, which is a really, really great project where we're helping studios from marginalized people try to get access to funding, etc. Because it's very difficult to get funding at the moment. So go to our website, go to coven.co, and look into it. There's loads of grants and these kind of things that are like around. So Microsoft has a grant that is specifically like a DEI grant. Unity has Unity for Humanity. Um, there's the Sony one as well that is a diversity and inclusion grant, etc. There's loads of stuff out there for people that want to start their own studios to support you when you're marginalized. What was the first? Because I went into the second part of the question, didn't I?
Do you have any advice for those who want to continue to work in games
Okay.
as well as to start their own organization?
I mean, it's not the best time right now to be in the games industry, isn't it? I think like it's important. Like we need the diversity. We need to like I was saying, like we need to continue being there even when we're not wanted. And it's the best way to make this industry a better place. And realistically, we have an opportunity by making the games industry a better place to make the world a better place, because the games industry is literally the only storytelling medium where you're helping someone walk through someone else's shoes. It is a super unique like way where we get to tell stories that doesn't exist in any other way. So just like be there and continue to show that like empathy is a skill that is valuable, and that is one that we continue to be like to need to be aspiring for. And we can do that through creating really great games and have great representation in the stories that we're telling. And then we get people see themselves in those games, and we have people that are not from marginalized backgrounds experience what it's like to be marginalized from the perspective of a video game, and then they can like work on their empathy skill and kind of like grow them as well in that way. um yeah, so just be there, continue showing up. And it's if it's tough, like finding communities, like like having this community is really great. And finding like-minded people that you can talk to, that you can connect with, so that you have your own community within that, where you can feel safe, you can feel like you have your people around you. And that helps with kind of like continuing to feel like you belong.
Mhm. I think that's so important, is the community aspect of knowing where and who you can talk to, and even the level of just like within a game that you love, knowing that there's a community there for your like-minded people who enjoy playing that game, within the industry, within local events, even on, and then on the global scale. And I think just to throw in my 2 cents here in terms of like things being more difficult for people from our backgrounds to access funding and develop games. Um, Maybe I'm drinking too much of the Kool-Aid. I don't know, too much of something. Um, but if we look at the whole lifetime cycle of things, there are a ton of cancellations of games that should not be being cancelled right now. If we're looking at all of the consoles, all the platforms, and what their lineup is for the next 2 to 3 years, um, we have to kind of look with that vision of come hell or high water, there were going to be games in those lineups made from diverse people. And, we're fighting very hard to make sure that those doors aren't closed. So while everything looks really, really freaking grim now, we're pushing for those doors to stay open. Because in 2 years' time, it's going to look freaking rich as fuck. Sorry. Give me my battering ram. Yeah, it's going to be diverse and colorful and representative of the games that we enjoy playing by the people who are actually making them. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, for sure. And it's I think like we're seeing so many people talking about like the benefit of indies, and like how we're seeing like the kind of like golden age of indies at the moment, with games that were made by independent studios kind of like being in the limelight a lot. And this is an opportunity for us to take that space, because the like realistically the indie space has more diversity than the AAA space. So it's a great time for us to take that, to be the battering ram, and to take that space by the horns and go for it. And like we it's like I think that we're seeing it at the moment that the games industry is struggling with that creativity. And so it's also a great time for us to turn that ship around and come with that creativity and with that uniqueness and really tell those stories from everyone.
Brilliant. I think we have time for one or two more questions. Um, I'm getting buzzed off of this chat we're having here. I'm like, I feel like I take on the world again after this. Um, where am I going to go to? Are you seeing opportunities, projects, initiatives? This is kind of touching on what we were just talking about around addressing the intersectionality of gender and disability in gaming for within organization, region, and country. This is from Latoya. Do you see this becoming an area of focus in the industry in the future?
I would love to see more of it. I think that we are still very single minded when it comes to talking about diversity and inclusion in the games industry. Um, I'm seeing that people are slowly becoming more and more comfortable with like that subject in general and just thinking about it from like a much wider perspective. But I think we're still seeing a lot of um, tick boxy kind of ways of addressing diversity and inclusion. So I hope that we're getting to a place where people start kind of like zooming out a little bit instead of trying to focus on one area of supporting like specific marginalized people and instead just making those spaces much bigger because when we don't, we are bound to leave people behind. And the people that are most likely to be left behind are the people that are most likely to get forgotten about by society. Um, and like the engendered spaces that will come with non-binary people and trans people by extension as well, kind of like feeling a little bit left behind. It's that, right? It's about like the wider you go, the wider the net you go, the more likely you are of not leaving people behind and not leaving people feeling alone and forgotten about. And that is so important. But I think we still have a long ways to go before that becomes a lot more normalized, and I will continue um, shaking all the trees until that happens.
Please continue shaking the tree. Oh, what is yeah, I'm gonna leave my Animal Crossing over there. I'd also like to just suggest also to people that Able Gamers is also a great org and Safe in Our World.
um, what is the name? Special effects.
Yes,
Rather than able gamers. Is special effect is really great. There is, if you, I believe it is still open, the Impact 50 from Money Cats, which is an organization for, yeah, so money. If you look into Money Cats, they're doing the Impact, which is a list of disabled people in the games industry. There is also, um, oh, now I'm trying to come up with it. It's um, I will it will come back in a bit, but there's lots of really great organizations supporting disabled people in games, and they're well worth kind of like connecting with and keeping an eye out on, to find that community as well.
maybe we can follow up with some links that
Yeah.
by later because I know I'm like even our own Fen
It's,
ran a
yeah,
game jam for for
I think it's Not Without Us or something like that. I'm trying to remember the exact name. Because they're at the moment, they've got applications open to support one person based in the UK. Nothing Without Us. Thanks, Jade. God, I was really trying to get it. If you're in the UK and are able to travel to develop by train, they're currently looking to support one disabled individual to attend develop with a grant. So that's a really great one for us.
Thank you. Yeah, no, brilliant. Okay, and then just to Jade, you asked some brilliant questions. Thank you for being so engaged. We touched on these, I think, throughout the chat, but as somebody who's looking to employ and set up policies to build in DEI from the start line. Maybe a key takeaway from that, but also I think what Jay touched on with the other question of, is there a faster way to read than needing to look at a policies page for seeing if a studio is a good place to work at? I mean, we tried that with Evolve. Is there a badge or icon that we can look for? There isn't really, is there?
No, so we tried addressing this with Evolve, the studio accreditation. The industry just isn't in a great place right now to be investing in us being able to do that level of work, just because everyone is like focusing on keeping their people employed, unfortunately. But no, I think like right now it is about kind of like looking at the policies, looking at the benefits, and kind of looking at who works for that company and what they're saying about it. You can look on Glassdoor as well and what they're saying. But bear in mind that obviously Glassdoor is reviews by people that have left the company usually, or it's people that like when it comes to reviews, reviews are more likely to be biased towards the negative. Like people that have having a okay or great, like unless it's really great or it's really bad. Like if you're just having an okay experience, you're less likely to be wanting to put up a review for that. But yeah, like what look at what people are saying on social medias about their companies, etc. I think that you can get a lot from that. Um, but yeah, so there isn't anything. And when it comes to kind of like getting started with DEI and trying to do DEI at your studio, it's a question that I get a lot. My first answer is don't. Which seems counterproductive because I've done it, and I'm telling you, I do as I say, not as I do, a little bit. But if you want to take that on, like remember that emotional labor should still be paid. Emotional labor is still labor. That you shouldn't be expected to give away all your knowledge for free. That you shouldn't ever have to expose your own trauma and damage yourself mentally for the benefit of a company that will ultimately make profit. That is like you should never put your own mental well-being in the way of that. So if you want to take on that kind of work, um, understand your own boundaries. Like get really good at understanding what your boundaries are and when they're likely to get crossed. And start with that, and start with understanding like what you're going to be giving to the company of your own knowledge, how you're going to see growth or benefit from that, because if you're giving them something, it is a for-profit company. They should be giving you something in return. Like you should have a benefit as a result of sharing your knowledge from that. And then as soon as you're seeing your boundaries crossed, like learning how to advocate for yourself, learning how to say like, I am not going to be doing that. I am not going to be do like I'm not crossing this boundary because this is going to harm me if I cross it, and get really good at kind of like figuring out when to step away and when to walk away from something. Like don't be scared of walking away from something that is additional to your work, especially because you don't have to do it unless it becomes your full-time job, in which case talk to me and we can commiserate together. But like just like be very good at it. And it's going to sound very harsh, but ultimately like remember that it is a job, and that like even if you're very passionate about it, and even if it's something that you're seeing like having a positive impact to people around you, you still need to disconnect, you still need to relax and find time for yourself away from your job, because you do not want your whole life and your whole value and your whole personality to be centered around your work. Because if for any reason you're in a position where you're not able to work and all you have is your job, you're going to really be struggling in terms of your well-being if you find yourself in that position. So find other things that are not just games for you to be doing in order to regain energy, in order to like bring yourself back above water, so that you don't harm yourself in the way. Um, yeah, on the on oxygen mask is exactly it. It is so important because I found myself in that situation when I burnt out, and I didn't want to consider doing anything other than DEI because I was helping people, because I was seeing having like it had an impact on people, etc. But then I wasn't able to do that, and I didn't know what to do with myself. And it's not a good position to be in, and it's not good when you're finding yourself there. So find those things before you get there so that you don't have to be in that position. So yeah, like just be very good at that. And then, like there's, if you want to, like there's books that you can read, there's loads you can learn, like going online and kind of like learning more and listening to, all marginalized people and their experiences and what they're experiencing through life, and kind of like, like just doing like that work of learning. But if you want to do that work for your studio, um, I think like it's also super valuable, and I'm not just saying that because it's my job, but it is really valuable for you to get help from someone whose job it is to do that. Like, and that is external, because like I was saying, like having someone external that isn't focused, that isn't living that company every single day, can see things differently and can bring up those actions. And like I will be able to go speak to the leadership team and tell them you need to be doing these things that will improve your company, because it's not going to put my livelihood at risk by doing that, by speaking out. um, so like it's, yeah, having like an external person that comes in and helps you, and then you can like work with that person too for you to be set up long term, right? But it's, yeah, it's important to have external help where possible.
All right. Well, Cinzia, thank you so much for your time, your expertise, and sharing so vulnerably with us. Does everybody have a way of getting in touch or know where to reach you? Where's the best place to reach you?
I mean, I'm not difficult to find. My name is written on the screen. Apparently there is another Cinzia in the games industry. I've learned that recently in the UK games industry. But yeah, so if you Google me, you will find me. I'm on Blue Sky. I think I have my DMs open there. I'm on LinkedIn. Feel free to like message me or connect. If you're in the UK and you're in the UK games industry Slack, you can reach me over there as well. And I've got my website with a contact form as well. So yeah.
Brilliant. Well, this has been really great. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming and for all the great questions and being so engaged. It's been really enlightening, fun, and I feel rallied now. So I appreciate that. Thank you, everyone. All
Thank
right.
you. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.